the land of Israel, that small, thin strip of land, this is today's modern-day state of Israel, became the interstate highway for world commerce between three continents. It's a land bridge between Europe, Asia, and Africa. It has water, so it had food. It had people to care for the needs of people. And so this is kind of the world's highway. Now, how big is Israel? We're in Atlanta today. This is a perfect illustration. Israel is modern day Israel, about as tall as Georgia, north to south. And you can fit 5 Israels side by side in our state of Georgia. It's very, very thin. It's one reason a tour of Israel can be done in a week and a half. You can see almost everything in a week and a half because everything's very close together. And most of it's from the midpoint up, to the north section. So we've got this. But do you know that little highway actually has a bottleneck at a place called Megiddo. And I'll show you how this works. So we zoom in over Haifa, and as you come in over Haifa, if you look directly to the right in this Google Earth map, that's to the south, you'll see the Carmel mountain range. Now that's really not that big of a deal of a mountain. You can take a car right over the top. But what if you didn't have a car? What if you're walking? What if you've got a string of donkeys behind you or camels behind you with all these goods? People were looking for a way to get through the mountain range with as little trouble as possible. The Gilboa Mountains are on the Jordanian side of this, and so as the Gilboa and the Carmel Mountains meet, they both die out at a little valley, and there's a place called Megiddo, and right here at Megiddo, there's a pass through the mountains that's pretty easy to navigate, the Megiddo Pass. And even today, modern-day highway builders have put a major highway right through there. Why? Because you don't want to have to cut through a mountain when you've got a valley. We always put the roads in the valleys. And so the Megiddo Pass will cut through. This is the way you get from the northern part of Israel to the southern part. And in ancient times, that made the community of Megiddo extremely important. World leaders around that part of the world, whether they're in Africa, Europe, or in Asia, they all saw the value in holding Megiddo. Because if you could hold on to Megiddo, you could stop all of that traffic. If you've got an army big enough to direct all traffic to that bottleneck, and you just put up a toll booth there, and you can charge them a toll, you can call it a tariff, you can call it taxes. There really are no new things under the sun, are they? And you can become very, very wealthy. And that is why there are 26 layers that have been found so far in Megiddo. Country after country, world leader after world leader wanted the city, and nobody wanted to give it up. And so they would always fight. And the newcomers would come in and they would knock down the walls of Megiddo. They would destroy things. They might burn things. And then they would build new on top of it. As this city becomes taller and taller, this is an important detail. People begin to call it Mount Megiddo, and the Hebrew word for mount is har. Say har. Har. H-A-R, har. Now you need to apologize to somebody right around you. Har Megiddo, through the years, kind of took on a new word as people slurred it together. Remember, this is an international pass coming through here. And people began to call it Armageddon. And there's the valley below Megiddo. It's actually part of the massive Jezreel Valley. But along the Jezreel Valley, you'll find many places that kind of take on a different name because of the local community there. And in this particular local community, you're dealing with the Valley of Armageddon. The first time I went to Israel, I was with a bus full of pastors, and it was actually nighttime when we got there. And of course, we had just flown all the way over. It had been a stressful trip. I was by myself. I didn't know anybody. None of us could stay awake on this bus ride, but the very talkative guide couldn't help but describe to us things we could not see. And we all went to sleep. Until he suddenly said, well, we're riding through the Valley of Armageddon. And every head on the bus immediately came back to focus. And I'm going to tell you, speaking for that bus full of 35, 40 pastors, I'm pretty sure none of us knew there's actually a Valley of Armageddon. John says in Revelation that the last battle will take place, and he even spells it out, that is called in Hebrew, Armageddon. Now, we've been, in a sense, trained to think of Armageddon as a word that represents an idea or a movie. You know, it's been used so often in sort of symbolic ways. You might have even used it to describe a particular argument between you and your spouse. I hope not. Because that's like the ultimate argument. But the movies that have been out. But here's the deal. John and all of his readers, as he gets this revelation from Jesus, when he hears that there's going to be a battle at Armageddon, he understands immediately, and he has an insight that I've missed all my life, and that is, well, that's where all the battles take place. In fact, more battles have taken place in the valley below Megiddo than in any other place on our planet. It's the most fought-over piece of ground already in history by the time Jesus was here. I mean, you think about it. The Egyptians wanted it, so they took it. The Israelites wanted it, especially under David and Solomon became very wealthy. Wonder if one of the ways he became extremely wealthy was fortress cities like this, and he charged people to come through. He certainly was a heavy taxer, according to his son's Rehoboam's political problems. And so then the northern kingdom took it from the southern kingdom, but the Assyrians took it from them, and the Babylonians took it from the Assyrians, and the Persians took it from the Babylonians, and eventually the Greeks took it, and then the Romans took it. And it just keeps going on and on. Napoleon fought there. A key battle in World War I under direction of English General Allenby turned the battle against the Turks here. He actually studied the battles of Armageddon to decide which path he would take. And he surprised the Turks here by looking for strategic patterns. Some of those battles were in the Bible that he studied. Well, we could talk about this, maybe some more, but here's my point. The Valley of Megiddo is a literal place, and like the literal places of past history could confirm for us, we could draw a rational conclusion that if all of the places dealing with the past are literally true and faithful to the record, why would not a place like this, which is literally there, literally true, and has a literal history, also have a literal future that the Bible's already told us about? It's not an idea, it's a place, and it will be a battle. One more little thing before we leave Megiddo. This is the Valley of Megiddo, and now remember, the Jezreel Valley goes all the way across from Haifa, the Mediterranean, goes all the way to the Jordan River Valley, and different little parts of the valley have different names, including that of Megiddo. But check this out. What's on the other side of Megiddo of this valley? You've got to have two sets of mountains to have a valley, and on the other mountain ridge is Nazareth. Who grew up in Nazareth? I think it was my third time in Megiddo when a guy pointed out, the first two times it just went right over my head, but he kept saying, now there's Nazareth. And if you go to the precipice of Nazareth, you can look out, and even from this view across the Church of the Annunciation in Nazareth, you can see the valley right down there below us as it comes into view. And so you can go to the precipice and you can sit there. And I wonder how many times Jesus as a boy, as a teenager, would sit there. You know, I was thinking about it. It's 2018. Jesus, this year, 2,000 years ago, would have been a young adult. Don't know exactly how old, but he would have been working, you know, he'd been doing the carpentry work. And did he ever just kind of meditate here? Because this actually has more history that would affect our reading of the story of Jesus than you would imagine. The Roman 6th Legion was based at Megiddo on the ground, not on top of the hill. They had such an incredible army, they just were on the ground. And the remnants of their camp were found within the last 5 years, very near Megiddo. 20,000 soldiers were a part of the Roman 6th Legion, although I doubt they ever had 100% participation or attendance, whatever. They scattered out all over Israel, so I'm not saying there were 20,000 soldiers in the valley, but there were thousands. that scattered around Israel. There's no doubt Jesus saw crucifixions in the valley. He saw cruelty in the valley. There's more we can say about it, but that's just kind of to say, for one of our more familiar phrases of prophecy, Armageddon, it's a real place. Well, we have to go to Jerusalem. The world watches Jerusalem.